First up is Dr. Hadi Hajibeygi from TU Delft to tell us all about underground hydrogen storage. Hadi.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Talking all about hydrogen, I just will say no, that's not all about, but some about. And in fact, the topic I had decided to talk about today was we ultimately would like to build confidence in new technologies, especially, let's say, in this case, underground hydrogen storage. That's the ultimate game with all the technical feasibilities, risk analysis, monitoring, etc. And then I said, let's pick the topic on building confidence on UHS. But then I said, well, Hadi, you know what? You may want to just do towards building confidence. And then now when I wanted to come and here and said today, just in the break, I thought, maybe I talk about the path towards building confidence. So I'm going to do my best in the next 2 hours or so, 20 minutes, to talk about being a bit self-critical about whether we can really deliver something at the time with the right confidence factor, etc. So with that, let me first, just for the sake of everybody coming to the same picture, say, why are we interested in underground hydrogen storage? And this is especially now different than about 50 years ago, when space agencies were booming, and you have seen even Scientific American had the title of the hydrogen economy, 1972. So it's a long time ago that people have been working on it. In fact, there is a Department of Energy report on underground hydrogen storage dated 79, by the Gas Technology Institute in Chicago. And I talked to them, I want to do underground hydrogen storage. They said, you're welcome to the community. I mean, we have been doing this for decades, right? So now the thing is, at that time, hydrogen became very popular and a space agency grabbed it. They launched rocket with it. And we have facilities that store 5 to 10 gigawatt hour of energy. That's what you need in a space agency. You want to go more to the consumption of energy that we have in this country. 17.5 million people live here. They consume 800 terawatt hour of energy per year. 800 tera. US, 30,000 terawatt hour. So that's where we look into underground hydrogen storage to allow us ultimately store several terawatt hour of energy, either in salt caverns, where they are created by solution mining procedure. You can store about 200, 250, depending on what you do. And then terawatt hour, obviously, in porous media, in depleted gas and oil reservoirs, for example. Today, in this hosting country that you are for the first time here, welcome everyone, by the way, we are storing natural gas in 4 sites. About 16% of our total energy per year is stored in the form of natural gas in these 4 sites: Berchemir, Alkmaar, Norg, and Grijsberg. So gas storage is taking place, and our ultimate gain is about that we are storing 130 terawatt hour of energy only in the form of gas. Now, if we transfer the economy to hydrogen, we would need a lot of a storage capacity to be developed. That's the reality of it. And hydrogen contains about a quarter of the energy of methane, so you would need 3.5 to 4 times more volume to store the same amount of energy that you would have stored otherwise with natural gas. In this case, you would need massive volumes for storage. So the hydrogen economy would require a lot of space for storage of hydrogen if we go to adapt the energy sector to pick it up and not just a space agency to pick it up. Yeah. So what's happening here? In the northeast of the country, there's this close to Groningen gas field, which is seismically active. We are pilot testing the first Dutch underground hydrogen storage for cyclic energy supply. 4 new caverns are being constructed. The first one finished recently. And they will totally store a terawatt hour of energy, about 10 million times of a Tesla car battery. 1 cavern, 10 million Tesla car battery. That's the scale. Also in France, there is an ongoing project in the city of Trèves. It's a hipster project, which is European, also Union funded, co-funded. And they are trying to say whether we can run a hydrogen economy in a town for transportation, for usage, etc. So it's a very small cavern, for about 3 tons of green hydrogen, for cyclic hydrogen. The capacity of Europe for salt caverns is huge, by the way. So Germany is the first, then Netherlands and UK, Denmark, others. In porous rock, the first demonstration is in Austria. Rock Company is doing that. Soon in November, they are also going to show us. Giovanni and I will be there as well. So they are demonstrating 100% pure hydrogen in a small, shallow gas field, a few million cubic meters. And, surprise, the very first one was in Argentina, 2010. They co-inject CO2 and hydrogen to create methane in the underground, which is called green methane. And you wonder why Argentina? I asked them, and you can ask them as well. But this is something that is important, that there are ongoing projects that here you would create green hydrogen, you co-inject with CO2, and you use the environment in the subsurface and create methane. So you would upgrade the energy content of it. Eric Mackay has worked on it as well. So now I would like to go to some sort of reliability. For all these projects, salt cavern, porous reservoirs, you would like to do simulation. This is what we do, right? And so we do a lot of modeling, a lot of simulation to estimate visibility, risk, migration, trapped amount of hydrogen, etc. And if you get a sample like this, which is a real field from Australia, prototype for this sort of project, and use any function that you had in the literature at the time of about a few years ago, you would end up with some sort of cyclic hydrogen storage performance for this site. And you would understand, analyze, and then get license, you go and operate. But how can you make sure that it was a valid simulation? What if something goes wrong? Right? This is a kind of our daily practice in engineering. We prototype, we model, but then we also get great and nice pictures, etc. And then we say, can I really trust my simulation for this process? And there are a lot of wise people in this room, and I'm going to share a bit of a discussion about my perspective on it, but I'm sure that you would have a lot more also to add on this topic. That how can we make our models and predictions valid in this uncertain, multi-scale, heterogeneous system? And what is a good simulation for this? Yeah, we could talk for hours and days on it, but I would like to take one niche of it and be a bit kind of more precise in my objective of talk today. So let's share with you what happened recently on CCS. A group in University of Bergen and then with Stuttgart and MIT, they said, we will create a Helle shell cell with a few meter size, with layers of sand on each other and heterogeneous, and we inject CO2 there, and we do not show you the result of that experiment. Everybody who has done simulation, send us your results. We will show it to everyone. So you predict what is going to happen. So what happened was it's a big Helle shell cell. It's an international community type of work. And they showed to us a tracer test. If we inject the same water in that location, for example, this is how the tracer, the water, single phase flow happens. So go and calibrate your permeability and other things. And now we start to inject CO2, and the system uncertainty is not much. There is maybe one fault that it was intentionally placed with not much information about. And so you come to your own study and say, how would I model this process? I mean, this is, of course, a community platform. Sebastian has also contributed in it. So it's a lot of colleagues have contributed in this study. And you would say, I can match with this observation of single phase flow with a lot of choices. My master's student decided to actually make it anisotropic. And he said, Hadi, if I make it anisotropic permeability a bit, 0.9, I can match. I said, if you say so. I mean, we have one snapshot. If it matches, then it matches. Others did differently. Yeah? And then we came up to the moment of reality. Where is the CO2 going to be in this layered heterogeneous sample like this? This is what we got from the saturation of CO2 after 24 hours, one day. All other colleagues submitted, Austin, CSIRO, Los Alamos, Heriot-Watt, my other colleague Dennis, we have 2 simulators in Delft. And we decided we are from the same, previous long time ago, before you were born, we were at Stanford together. Now we have the same education. We actually predicted differently. We interpreted the same thing, which was in front of us, differently. And it's a lot of us actually involved in this than the simulator and numerical method you do. So we are actually different. And then you go to the matching of how much CO2 is dissolved, you will see that we are quite different, even though the uncertainty is far smaller than the reality. We are not talking about 2.5 kilometers that we haven't even seen. It's about something in front of your eyes. Then what is the right solution? Who is right? I guess nobody. Is it the experiment which is correct? This is an experiment of one snapshot of what can happen. This is just to trigger some sort of thoughts within the experts sitting in this room. The green shows where we are, and others are also there, so we try to quantify the error. But the message here is, even with that little amount of uncertainty and seeing what we were seeing, we actually deviated a lot. So validating, my message is this, is very important to develop confidence. Validation is important, and it does require data, obviously, etc. And now I am in the hydrogen business, and now there is not much data available, and how can I build confidence in this field? Yet that's the real technical challenge we are working in Delft. And this is our chair about. Multi-scale modeling and subsurface storage is what we are doing in my chair in Delft. And so when we go to reservoir engineering side, you do simulation, etc., but you need to understand the geology, geophysics. Sebastian is about to speak about heterogeneity and all the geology related to it much better than I would do, so I wouldn't dare speaking in front of him about that. Then I go to the physics of flow, and you just saw Eric Mackay spoke about the CCS so well, and this is something that with hydrogen we thought that we should just somehow bring them all in-house, to go from laboratory to pore scale modeling to even molecular scale understanding of the chemistry, of the thermodynamic of the system, to make sure that we understand what we are doing. We did the same for mechanics. That's an example for cyclic loading on rock sample for salt caverns and multi-cavern system, their heterogeneity, distances, etc. We try to just somehow try to be as accurate as we can, so that the uncertainty is not within the kind of models we are using, more on the lack of just data from the field. So we got one of the experiments we have done recently was we put a rock inside a CT scan and flushed hydrogen back and forth. And we quantified relative permeabilities, capillary pressure, the very practice that has been done. The challenge was actually working with hydrogen, making sure it doesn't leak, it's also safe, it doesn't just escape, so it's a lot of HSE you could go. And then we checked it with then some time later, the work that was published in Bergen in Norway, and we were surprisingly quite close with the curves we got. So usually you don't expect this, but actually we picked maybe the right paper to benchmark with, because there was another paper we weren't really matching that well. And then we were thinking about why that paper was not was different than us, etc. This is an ongoing discussion about it recently. But when we get those data sets and match your curves and go back to the test case you have studied before, you will see that if you do that reliable modeling, you will see significant differences in your performance analysis. Which one is right? None of them. Because still, we are assuming heterogeneity is given, we are assuming data is given, we are assuming a lot of things, but at least we are trying to go towards the path of validating what we are doing and improving what we do. And I said about matching with data. And matching with data, if you speak with those who actually have worked with experiments, a lot of colleagues will speak, Rick Chalaternik will speak also, and Giovanni as well. It's a blessing and curse. Working with data and matching and tuning, calibrating your model with experiment is not an easy job. We did it, benchmark with the experiment here, right? But then the benchmarking with the experiment, I just was saying that we just calibrated with experiment, and it was as if it was like very easy. We just calibrate a fit, and then we say this is our relative permeability curve. Fitting that type of observation, especially when you have cyclic loading and cyclic transport with hysteresis, is not an easy job. Why? I'll speak a few minutes about it. For this kind of experiment, just take rock mechanics, because I spoke about the flow already and the cyclicity in the in the hydrodynamics, so we can speak about mechanics now. So I have a rock specimen that goes under cyclic loading. Cyclic loading motivates a lot of processes. Depending on what you have, depending on the rates, frequencies, you can have a lot of processes, not just elastic, that is well studied, but also a lot of plasticity. Again, Giovanni and Rick will speak about these sort of mechanics as well. And so you can take it as a modeler, you can take them all and fit it and then have a simulator that then can take care of all these kind of processes. But first challenge is, these models come with no concrete model. You can choose from different choices for plasticity, for viscoelasticity, etc. The second is they have a lot of parameters to fit. A lot of parameters to fit. Remember the single phase flow matching that then for the multi-phase flow we deviated all? Now here we can choose the model and the parameter. Yeah? So what we did is we received an experiment from a company. And we did calibrate our model, plastic model. This is, you see the total strain over time, and it's a cyclic loading, you see. And we calibrated with that first experiment, our model, and then predicted what will happen in experiment 2, and we were wrong. Experiment 2 with the same sample showed different behavior. So then if we match the second experiment, we receive different parameters to quantify the properties of our rock. But it's the same rock. So then you would say, how would I calibrate to get one characteristic for the same sample, right? And then we said, let's just do global optimization. Take as many experiments as provided to you. Try to find something that best matches with ensemble of experiments. So you may not be perfect in one, but you may be fairly okay in overall experiments that you have run. Okay, that does make sense. Maybe you have been lucky to have local optimum for one test. Here you try to find global optimum for your calibration process. And so we developed 3 different cases, from model uncertainty and parameter uncertainty, all the way to not much uncertainty, to very different. Test 3 is you have noise on the data, and you don't know which model was used to create your results. So you can choose even the model. So the first is a bit easy. I go to the second and a bit on the third. The second one is when you have the data having some noise in their creation. So you can actually match with it pretty easily. But then you are going to produce from model A lot of different sequences of behavior. But since you have picked the right model, when you calibrate, you will try to see whether you are predictive with the consequences of the tests coming. So we calibrate with the first one, which is red, and then we use that parameter set to actually go through and see if we can predict this future behavior. And we can, but we have a little bit of error, and if we include more of the test to optimize and go and look for the maximum in the global sense, we actually improve our predictions and get very close to finding the true parameter, which is the yellow one, and the orange line is our predicted one. Which means, if I show it another way, at the beginning with one experiment, you have some error, but if you include more experiments, you actually get better and better and closer to what the characteristics of your sample is. But now what happens if you have selected a wrong model and you want to match with the data given? So many wise people laugh here, so they just know it for the experience of life about this. So I pick one model, model B, and the rock has gone through model A, creation of synthetic experimental data. When I use the first experiment to calibrate, it actually is not too bad for the second test. It's predictive enough. The green curve is quite close to the dark, black curve, but it's certainly not predictive for the next experiments. The calibrated wrong model for the first test is not predictive for the rest. If I include more, except for the second one, and we have a theory for this second one, but that's interesting. So there are 2 different plasticity models that we have used to make this kind of example. If I use these 2 first experiments to calibrate, again, I'm not getting any better. And in fact, if I use all of the experiments available, I cannot match. when I have picked a wrong model and I use a rigorous analysis of matching with a lot of experiments that are different in the path of their stress field, I cannot match. So that's the sign that we say we need to change the model. Now, in reality, all models are wrong. Exactly. But some are useful. Our little experience with the first experiment was accidentally matching the second one for a reason. But it was not predictive for the other experiments that had different path of stress strain regime. This is what we are working, Herminio is working on this topic in great detail. But if I go to the second test case, when I could match with my observation, then I can predict about a 3D complex, very good-looking simulations that are kind of now, I would say, we understand the rock property for this case. So that's why for these sort of experiments and studies we do, we get the samples and experiments from companies who are interested in a specific thing. And for us, it's extremely important to receive from experimentalists sitting here different types of experiments that would allow us choose first the right model and then the right parameter to fit for it. It's extremely important for us. So you have established this laboratory, Giovanni. This is what we would directly benefit from what you do. So coming to end, validation is challenging but a crucial element of building confidence. And if you validate what you have done, you can also be sure about whether you can get license for your operation as well. And we have seen that validating what you have done and data fitting what you have done would significantly change your predictability and feasibility analysis. With mechanics, we found also that it's impossible to match with the right amount of experiments with the data that you have received from experiment if you have selected a wrong model. So if you can't match, change the model, or we can go to AI, and Behnam would tell us about it, but this is about whether we can go to just like physics-free type of modeling for these processes. In real life, again, all models are wrong, so we are in business and we will remain in business for years and years to come. So geosciences will stay, application will change. So thank you very much, everyone. And I would like to thank the sponsors, a great team behind this whole work, a lot of colleagues behind. Especially the occasion of this photo is that Martje Bohn, our former postdoc, now is a professor in Stuttgart, and now developing hydrogen research there. Yuhang Wang became also professor in China, and a lot of postdocs and colleagues. Kishan also worked on the mechanics side. He's now employee at Shell, domain expert mechanics. And so a lot of great students who are just recently graduating from this program, and we continue working on this topic of uncertainty and reservoir engineering for different applications. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hadi. Okay, questions?
Thank you very much, Hadi, for this nice presentation. Well, in Brazil, hydrogen, we are in the beginning, it's a hot topic, and especially in my region, we have a lot of energy production from solar and wind, and so we have the opportunity to have green energy, green hydrogen, but nobody's talking about, or few people is talking about storage.
Right.
Okay, so it's a lot to do. So in your opinion, what is the basic or the first steps and the basic infrastructure from the laboratory point of view that you can begin to study and begin to understand? We have, for instance, saline
Aquifers.
we have salt rocks in onshore and offshore. So it probably will be the first target.
This is a great question, and I have part of the answer from my perspective. Others also will have differently. When I give this talk, sometimes in different occasions of different broader energy perspective, the first question sometimes I receive is that we don't have enough hydrogen today. You're working on a storage in megatons and gigatons. That's a very practical thing. The reality is development of this kind of prototype that I said in Zoutwingen in the Netherlands, 4 salt caverns, the first one is finished. This is about 10-year project. So if you want to have in 10 years from now, 10 million tons of hydrogen to be produced in Europe mainland and 10 million tons to be imported, that's our European Union policy, we do need to start right now because it takes time, licensing, planning, operation. And the great uncertainty here is how much storage you would need in 10 years from now. And then you would map on it and see what are the capacities you have. Some companies decide based on the reservoirs they have. If I have license on operation on this gas field, I need to make use of it. If I don't have any salt cavern, so this salt cavern that I showed in Netherlands, Gas Unie is doing that because they own that storage gas site. Yeah, they have operational license. So if other companies do this, they need to apply for license, which is time consuming, by the way. And we don't have clear policy yet. How do you license to scale it up? And that's why the risk analysis monitoring comes. Monitoring has been extremely understudied for these cases. And that's why we are also working with Eric on Delphi. So the first thing is map your geology. See, salt caverns are the first option because they are proof and seals to hydrogen, and you would be really having a tank if you can maintain. Deep gas fields would be certainly an option, but they are less studied, and that's why we are working on this to see whether we could really, in a firm way, say the practicality of it would work. And this is why Austrian company RAG is actually doing a lot of service to the community because they are prototyping it this year. So map it. If you have salt cavern deposits, that would be great. If people allow, public perception is another perspective. If they allow onshore, just put it onshore because it's much less costly. For us, we need to go offshore if we do gas fields. We need to go. There is no alternative because people don't accept it.
Okay, any questions? There's none online other than a comment from Monsieur Riazi saying it's a great presentation. Well done, Hadi and the team. I guess I can fill in with one question about, with all the uncertainties of generating synthetic cases and whatnot, could you generate sufficient synthetic cases with reasonable physics and whatnot and use machine learning to help?
Absolutely. Here we are trying to find characteristics with very few experiments. So the training for us is not 1,000 or 100 because we cannot afford it in laboratories. Right. So we want to see whether with 5 or 6 data sets, could we find what model, what parameter. And that's not the easiest thing to do. If you would go to 1,000 of experiments, etc., you may just have already a kind of ensemble of what can happen. Then machine learning might have come more practical. But here we want to have very few. And we are given, by the way, from companies who sponsor us, those data sets.
Right. I was going to say that most researchers would love to have data sets, and you have the luxury of getting some data set from the industry.
Yes, right. But then it requires approval to really show what, but then it comes always with surprises. Okay. Always with surprises.
Great.
To see, why it is happening this way. So
okay, once again, there's a question from Rick.
Yeah,
Comment?
Rick Shelter. Haji, can I ask you a question about, you mentioned about in the CT work, the sample you put in, you sloshed, I think that was a technical term, right? That must be a Delft thing, like sloshing or something. The fine-grained stuff, right? Even like your simulation had a perfect seal. So can you give a sense of where you think that side is going to go for hydrogen storage around how to test in those sort of ultra low permeability materials, mudstones, hydrogen goes everywhere.
Absolutely.
Just your sense of that sort of seal side of the work for hydrogen.
That's an excellent question. And that's one of the key factors in enabling it. Others can be on how optimum the performance is, but that's an excellent question about how you will make sure the seal is sealed. What we have observed in our laboratory experiments is that we put a cylinder of brine with a rock on the top, and then we release hydrogen bubbles, and then we release other gases like methane. Here methane would be very practical because you would know the reservoir was a sealing to natural gas, and then you would like to see whether hydrogen would be more mobile. Our understanding of brine filled system with the cap rock is that since the bond number of hydrogen and methane are exactly the same, bond number is the ratio of gravity rise compared to capillary non-wetting force that, hey, I don't like you, hydrogen, you are non-wetting, don't come to me. The ratio of this for hydrogen and for methane are exactly the same. So the sealing for methane would be sealed for hydrogen. Now, this is the first thing we have done. Is it a valid statement? No. We need more tests, sir, and that's exactly where my also question comes, that under what other conditions? If it's filled with brine, yes, but We are talking about the gas, which is already a cushion gas is there. You just sweep the brine out, and then it's quite dry. And then hydrogen is there with the rock, and then you need to do more and more studies. And this is what we are doing. We have some sparse analysis that this would be a good seal, but validating it takes time. And we are working on it, but others would also as well. Is it? Well, here you go. And then you do absolutely under cyclic loading, and then you may also penetrate through if you just overpressure the system. These are all the questions we have started at ITN European project for 10 PhD students across Europe. 2 will come to Delft, others with Edinburgh. And this is one of the questions we are doing with Grenoble Alps in France about what would be the high pressure that would make it penetrate through from this kind of cyclic. We are going to do tests on this type of topics. Yeah.
Okay, once again, thank you, Hadi.
Pleasure. Thank you.